Iran said it cannot find its own mines. Then Iran walked out of the peace talks. And the people in Washington calling both of those things accidents are missing the one question that actually matters. What if neither of them was an accident at all? For 21 hours, the most powerful country on earth sat across a table from a country it says has been completely destroyed. The Vice President of the United States, the President's son-in-law, a senior envoy, 3 people across from 71 Iranian negotiators inside the Serena Hotel in Islamabad, Pakistan. Cameras outside, Pakistani security on every street, 2 national holidays declared just to make space for the most important negotiation since the war began. 21 hours. Then the Iranians stood up, packed their papers, and left the building. No deal. No agreement. No path forward. The American delegation was stunned. The Pakistani mediator was disappointed. Oil prices jumped the moment the news broke, and within hours of those talks collapsing, 2 American warships, the USS Michael Murphy and the USS Frank E. Peterson, sailed directly into the Strait of Hormuz. Without asking Iran, without coordinating with Iran, with their identification signals deliberately turned on so everyone in the world could see them moving through water that Iran was supposed to be controlling. Iran's response was immediate. The Revolutionary Guard called it a ceasefire violation, threatened severe consequences, and issued what it called a final warning. Somewhere in the middle of all of this, a story broke that almost nobody connected to the rest of it. Iran admitted, or at least an American official told the New York Times Iran was admitting, that Iran cannot find its own naval mines, the mines that Iran dropped into the Strait of Hormuz at the start of this war. The mines that are the reason commercial ships have refused to sail through those waters for 6 straight weeks. Iran's own military reportedly does not know where most of those mines are, because the Revolutionary Guard dropped them in a hurry from small boats without writing down where they went. And some of them have drifted, currents move them. So even the coordinates Iran did write down are now wrong. That is the official version. Iran is incompetent. Iran dropped mines badly. Iran cannot find them. The Americans will have to come clean up the mess. Everybody says the same thing. I want to walk you through why I think that story is exactly the opposite of what is actually happening. Because when you line up all 3 events, the mines Iran cannot find, the talks Iran walked out of, and the American warships Iran let sail through without firing a single missile, you start to see a plan, not a collapse. A plan. Let us start with the talks themselves. What was actually on the table inside the Serena Hotel. The American offer, delivered by Vice President JD Vance, was described in the press as his final and best. Here is what it contained. Iran had to commit, in writing, that it would never seek a nuclear weapon, not reduce enrichment, not accept inspections. Commit, on paper, to never. In exchange, the United States would agree to reopen discussions on sanctions at some unspecified future date. Iran's position was the 10-point proposal we covered in our last video. Full sanctions relief immediately. $6 billion of frozen Iranian money released before negotiations even began, a permanent ceasefire extending to Lebanon. Guarantees around Iran's nuclear program that treat Iran as a country with rights rather than a defendant, and a role for Iran in managing the Strait of Hormuz going forward. The gap between those 2 positions is not a negotiating gap, it is a worldview gap. Vance was offering Iran a deal that treated Iran as a defeated party asking for mercy. Iran was demanding a deal that treated Iran as a sovereign country with legitimate interests. There was never going to be a bridge between those 2 sides in 21 hours. There was probably never going to be a bridge in 21 days. So why did Iran even show up? This is the question that matters. Because Iran did not have to send 71 people to Islamabad. Iran did not have to have the Speaker of Parliament, the Foreign Minister, the central bank governor, and a team of legal experts sit down with Vance. Iran could have declined the invitation. Iran could have said no. Instead, Iran came, talked for almost a full day, put its positions on the record, and then walked out. Here is the answer. Iran showed up because showing up was worth more than the deal itself. Every country watching this negotiation, China, Russia, India, the Gulf states, the Europeans, every government on Earth that has to decide where it stands between America and Iran, needed to see who was making reasonable offers and who was refusing them. Iran walked into Islamabad with a 10-point plan that looked like a legitimate negotiating position. America walked in with an ultimatum dressed up as a deal. When the talks collapsed, Iran got to tell every government in the world a very specific story. We tried, we offered terms, America refused. That is a diplomatic weapon Iran could not get any other way. Now connect that to the mines. And stay with me, because this is where the picture starts to look very different from the official version. Iran dropped those mines in late February in the first days of the war. American officials estimated at the time that Iran had placed at least a dozen of them. These are not the simple mines of old movies, metal balls floating on chains with spikes. These are modern Iranian-made mines called the Maham 3 and the Maham 7. The Maham 3 sits anchored under the surface and detonates when its sensors detect a ship with the right profile. The Maham 7 rests on the seabed and can attach itself magnetically to a hull passing above it. Some of these mines are selective. They can be programmed to ignore small civilian boats and only target large military vessels. The official story is that Iran scattered them badly, that Iranian sailors in small fast boats rushed around the Gulf at night, dumping mines overboard without writing down coordinates, that some mines drifted with currents, that Iran, today, genuinely does not know where its own weapons are. Here is the problem with that story. Iran's navy has been laying mines in the Strait of Hormuz as a planned strategic option for over 30 years. This is not a new skill. Iran's submarines, small boats, and naval units have trained for exactly this scenario through decades of drills. The idea that the Revolutionary Guard, the most professionally disciplined military organization in Iran, simply forgot how to write down coordinates is not credible on its face. What is credible is something else. What is credible is that Iran did exactly what it wanted to do. Iran placed mines in known lanes. Iran placed some mines loosely on purpose, knowing they would drift, so that even mines that had been charted would move to unknown positions over time. Iran built a minefield that cannot be cleared by methodical coordinate by coordinate removal because there are no reliable coordinates. And then Iran turned around and told the world, through an unnamed official, that it is all a mistake. Think about the advantage that creates. If you are Iran and you tell the world, our mines are precisely placed here, here, and here, then the American Navy comes in with underwater drones and clears those exact spots. 2 weeks later, the strait is open and your leverage is gone. But if you tell the world, we don't know where the mines are, some of them drifted, nobody has a map, then the American Navy has to search every single square kilometer of the shipping lanes, and every ship captain has to assume the next meter of water could have a mine in it. The first story costs you your leverage in 2 weeks. The second story preserves it for months. Any competent military strategist, given those two choices, picks the second one every time. That is not incompetence. That is permanent, deniable deterrence. Every American minesweeper that enters those waters now has to assume every square meter could have a mine in it. Every oil tanker captain weighing whether to transit has to factor in the fact that mines may drift into the lane he planned to use. The insurance costs stay impossible. The supply of oil stays tight. The prices stay high. And I want to pause here to connect this to your life because this is not an abstract story about a faraway war. This is the reason your bills look the way they do right now. Gas in the United States is $4.17 a gallon on average. In some parts of the country, it is over $7. That is a 37% increase since this war began on February 28th. The March jump alone, 21% in a single month, is the largest monthly increase in gas prices since 1967, the year the United States started tracking it reliably. Fuel oil, to the stuff that heats American homes, went up 31% in 1 month. Airfares are up 15%. Consumer confidence in the United States just hit 47.6, the lowest number ever recorded, lower than the worst moment of the pandemic, lower than 2008, lower than any point measured in modern American economic history. There is also, right now, a developing shortage of jet fuel in parts of the country because the global supply chain that fills American airports runs through Gulf refineries, and Gulf refineries run on oil that cannot get to them. A family in America that drives a normal amount is paying over $1,200 more per year on gas alone compared to 2 months ago. Nobody voted for that. Nobody in Washington campaigned on that. It is happening because a country the United States says it has destroyed is controlling the flow of oil through a narrow strip of water by convincing the world it cannot find its own weapons. Here is the question I want to put to you, because people watching this are going to split on it, and that split is worth having out loud. Iran just walked out of a 21-hour negotiation after refusing to sign a commitment it will never build a nuclear weapon. On the same day, American officials are telling the press that Iran cannot find the mines it dropped in its own waters. Are these two events an accident? A country that is disorganized and losing control of its own military, playing at diplomacy and failing? Or are they one single coordinated strategy? A country that planned exactly this outcome and is getting exactly what it wanted? Write accident or strategy in the comments. And when someone writes the opposite of what you chose, tell them why they are wrong. Because the answer to that question is the answer to where this war actually goes from here. Now let me show you what happened after the talks ended, because this is where the picture gets even stranger. The USS Michael Murphy and the USS Frank E. Peterson, two American guided missile destroyers, each of them a serious naval weapon, sailed into the Strait of Hormuz. They crossed from the Arabian Sea into the Gulf, and then they sailed back out again. They did it with their identification signals turned on, so any Iranian radar operator could see them. They did it without coordinating with Iran. They did it as a message. The American Central Command announced it publicly. The United States is starting a mine clearance operation in the strait, and the ships are the first step. Trump said publicly that the United States is doing this as a favor to countries all over the world, including China, Japan, South Korea, France, Germany, and many others. He said American warships sank 28 Iranian mine-laying boats. He posted on social media that empty oil tankers from around the world are heading to the United States to buy American oil instead of Gulf oil. Iran's response? The Revolutionary Guard threatened what it called a final warning, said it would deal severely with military vessels, called the crossing a ceasefire violation, and then did nothing. The American warships completed their transit without a single mine detonating, without a single missile being fired at them, without a single Iranian patrol boat intercepting them. Think about what that tells you. If Iran's minefield were truly uncontrolled, if mines were drifting randomly and Iran did not know where they were, there was a real chance one of those American ships would have hit one. They did not. The mines stayed exactly where Iran wanted them to stay. The warships went exactly where Iran let them go. And Iran's threats, for all the heat of the language, stayed just threats. That is not a country that has lost control of its own waters. That is a country that is choosing which ships to let through and in what order to make a point. There is one more detail that almost nobody is putting together with the rest of this picture, and it is the detail that ties all of it back to Washington. Meanwhile, Israel's Prime Minister, Netanyahu, canceled what was supposed to be his 7th visit to the White House since Trump returned to office. He was scheduled to attend AIPAC, a major conference in Washington. He was going to join a peace council meeting with Trump. He skipped all of it. The stated reason was heightened tensions with Iran and domestic protests in Israel. The unstated reason, according to people who cover Israeli politics closely, is that Netanyahu did not want to be photographed with Trump at a moment when Trump's Iran strategy is collapsing publicly, and Netanyahu is continuing Lebanon strikes that Pakistan and Iran consider ceasefire violations. Netanyahu said the campaign against Iran is not finished. Israel struck another 200 targets inside Lebanon over the past day. This is where the story stands today. The talks collapsed. The warships crossed. The mines stayed. The bombing continues. And Iran, the country everyone keeps calling destroyed, is sitting on top of the flow of global oil, having just refused a deal that would have required it to give up the one thing every country with nuclear enemies eventually builds. Here is the last question I want to leave with you, and this one is the one that matters most for understanding what happens next. The ceasefire expires on April 22nd, 10 days from now. If no deal is reached, the bombs resume. Trump has said he will resume with even greater force than before. Iran has said it will shut the Strait of Hormuz completely. When that deadline arrives, do you think Iran will come back to the table and accept the deal it just rejected? Or do you think Iran will let the deadline pass, absorb the next wave of bombing, and bet that the economic pain inflicted through Hormuz will break America's political will before America's bombs break Iran? Write comes back, or lets it pass, in the comments. I want to see where the argument lands. Because here is what I think you just heard. I think you heard the story of a country that has been written off by every news channel and every official in Washington and is using that exact narrative, that it is destroyed, defeated, incompetent, as cover for a strategy that is working. Iran did not lose its mines. Iran scattered them on purpose and then told the world it lost them. Iran did not fail at the talks. Iran walked in, put reasonable terms on the record, and walked out knowing every government on earth would see who refused peace. Iran is absorbing real damage every single day, and Iran is also at the same time setting the conditions of a war the United States no longer controls. Neither the mines nor the walkout was an accident. Both were the same plan, running in parallel, designed to look like chaos from the outside and function like strategy from the inside. That is the story nobody on mainstream news is telling, and it is the story that explains everything that is going to happen over the next 10 days. If you want the full picture of exactly how those mines work, why the American Navy is struggling to clear them, and what the actual technical challenge in the Strait looks like, we covered that on our second channel, Animated Military. The newest video there breaks down step by step why the United States Navy cannot simply sweep the Strait of Hormuz clean, and what it actually takes to find a mine that nobody wrote down the location of. Watch that next. It is the piece of this story that connects what happens at the negotiating table in Islamabad to what happens on the water at 2 in the morning when a tanker captain has to decide whether to trust the charts.